Our guest speaker today is Brother Hamza Yusuf Hansen. He came back to Islam in 1978. He was educated in 1980 to 84 at the Islamic Institute of Al Ain in the United Arab Emirates. In 1984, he studied in Algeria at Bilal ibn Rabah in Tirzi. In 1985 to 86, he was at the Madrasa Al-Hajj in Mauritania. He studied Arabic and the traditional Islamic studies during this period. From 1987 to 1990, he took a degree in nursing and English in Southern California. And while studying homeopathic medicine during this time, he was also presently studying postgraduate work as a student of homeopathy with the Devon School of Homeopathy. Presently, Brother Hamza is involved in teaching Arabic, Islamic jurisprudence, and he's the acting Imam Khatib at the Muslim Community Association of the Bay Area in Santa Clara, California. In addition to the Quran, Tafsir and Khutbah at the South Bay Islamic Center, Brother Hamza travels nationwide and lectures at universities and Islamic centers, and he's now engaged in writing a book about the Dajjal and the New World Order. So we have indeed great pleasure in welcoming Brother Hamza Yusuf in our midst to Toronto, and to be with us this evening and to address us on this occasion. And we would be happy to have him and to pay attention to what he has to say and listen and leave here with some new knowledge of Islam which we didn't have before. Again, I ask parents to please keep their children quiet while we listen to Brother Hamza. Brother Hamza.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. فإني أحمد الله إليكم وأوصيكم وأوصي نفسي بتقوى الله. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given this ummah a gift that was not given to any ummah before it, and that is the preservation of the deen until the end of time. And inshallah, what the topic that I was asked to talk about was the Islamic medicine or the Quranic medicine for the ailments of the North American society. And I think that was based on a talk that I gave at the ISNA conference, which was a similar topic. It was called America's Problems, Islamic Solutions. And I looked at that topic and made the remark that I didn't think that Islam was a solution to the problem, because I think that it's an alien vocabulary to the Islamic teaching. And the reason for that is that problems, when solutions are found for them, if they're implemented, they tend to disappear immediately. Whereas the Quranic language talks about the Quran being a shifa, a healing, and it talks about the disease in the hearts, fi qulubihim marad, فَزَادَهُمُ اللَّهُ مَرَضًا. So the idea of the healing that takes place is that it's one, transformative, that two, that there's an indication of time, because there are very few diseases that you can actually have a spontaneous cure from. In fact, I can't recall any off the top of my head. Most diseases take time in order to come about, and then they take time to heal. If you look at the diseases of the Arabian Peninsula, at the time when the Prophet ﷺ arrived there, then you will see that there was a period of 23 years where the Prophet ﷺ was administering the medicine of Islam to a sick and diseased society. And his mission, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was not complete until he had left that society intact and integral in its own self. So a diseased body became well and then was able subsequently to go out and literally heal the world. Because the nature of Islam is that it is a healing. And the nature of the Muslims is that they are healers. That they take the light of Islam to the darkness of the world and dispel that darkness by the light of Islam. And the light itself, we heard earlier the ayat al-Nur, the light verse, the light itself is the healing. It is the transformation, because the disease is darkness. The disease is ignorance. And it is the light of Islam that dispels that disease, which is darkness, which is ignorance. The way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does that is clarified in the teachings of Islam. And in order just to look, one of the unfortunate aspects of the diseases of the American society, and I'll speak American by extension, the Canadian society as well, that is that all right to do that? Maybe not in Montreal, I don't know. That the sicknesses of this society no longer, you see, impact on the society itself. But these sicknesses are now exported all over the world. This is the tragedy of our time, is that kufr is no longer isolated in what is called Dar al-Harb. You see, the traditional Muslims had this worldview that was very nice. They had Dar al-Islam and Dar al-Harb. They had the abode of Islam, which was the abode of peace, Dar al-Salam, and they had Dar al-Harb, which was the abode of the war. Because the idea being that when Islam comes, there's peace. Our greeting is Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. The Prophet ﷺ said, أَلَا أَدُلُّكُمْ عَلَى شَيْءٍ إِن فَعَلْتُمُوهُ تَحَابَبْتُمْ فِي اللَّهِ. Can I tell you something that if you do it, then you'll love each other in Allah? And they said yes, and he said, أَفْشُوا السَّلَامِ, spread peace. Spread peace. I mean, if you say Assalamu alaikum, either it's just lip service, which is what we call a munafiq, or you're telling somebody peace on you, you see. Now the Muslim, they say Assalamu alaikum, and then the sledgehammer comes right after that, right? What they really mean is Silam alaikum, which is like the heavy rock on you, right? So Islam is about spreading peace. And when you spread peace, war, right, which is the opposite of peace, which is kufr, you see, kufr is a state of war with Allah. You're at war with Allah. Islam is a state of peace with Allah. The Quran says that that the one that makes riba, right, who transacts in riba, in usury, is making war, that Allah has declared war and His messenger. بِحَرْبٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ فَآذَنْ بِحَرْبٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. That Allah has declared war and His messenger on those who make riba, usury. And so the Prophet ﷺ said on the Yawm al-Qiyamah that the angel will give the murabi, the usurer, right, the banker now, in modern terms, the banker, right? It used to be the murabi or the usurer, now it's the banker, right? He'll give the banker the sword, right? President of Bank of America, Citicorp, all these nice corporations that are helping more and more people get into slavery and indentured servitude, right? In California, they have this big propaganda. It says, Bank of America, we've helped more Californians, right? They never tell you what they helped them do. They just say, we've helped more. Or, Bank of America, we're banking on America, right, to go bankrupt. Because we're the ones that are, right, putting everybody in debt. So on that day, right, Yawm al-Qiyamah, Yawm al-Adala, the day of justice, right, the murabi gets the sword and the angel says, Ha Rabbuka barizhu. Here's your Lord. Now go to war. Huh? See how long he lasts. Right? That's the Murabi. So, that's the nature of kufr, is that it used to be isolated in Dar al-Harb. Now, Dar al-Harb and Dar al-Islam are no longer, right? We're in now Dar al-Islam, here in this gymnasium. Right? Islamic basketball, inshallah. And next door is Dar al-Harb, right? Now, in the Muslim countries, I don't know, what do you call it? We don't even have terminology anymore. The fuqaha, if they exist anymore, but the ones that do are so confused now. They don't know where's Dar al-Harb, where's Dar al-Islam, where's Dar al-Sulh. It's all become confused. Nothing's clear. The Prophet ﷺ said towards the end of time, he said, يُصْبِحُ الْحَلِيمُ حَيْرَانًا, that the one with hilm, the one with forbearance and intelligence, sagacity, will become confused, will become bewildered. But that's the nature of the time we're living in, is a time of hayra. It's a time of bewilderment. It's a time when people are confused, you see. This is the nature of the age we're living in. And so, things are no longer clear. Kufr enters into our homes by our own hand. We turn on the television and we allow kufr to permeate the home, you see. Kufr is all over the Muslim world now. They have huge satellite discs, and they bring dhabdhabat kufriya, right? These electromagnetic microwaves, kufr microwaves, from these satellites that are floating around the earth. And they bring them into their homes. So their little abode, right, which could be technically their Dar al-Islam, because your house is your Dar al-Islam. That's at least, if you're Rabb al-Manzil, if you're the Lord of the house, then at least you can implement Sharia in your home. But now, the enemy is actually welcomed inside, you see. It's not, his name isn't Abu Jahl anymore, or, right, these Fir'aun, or Qarun and Harun, and these type, Jalut. He's got names like Samsonite, or Sharp, or Sony, right? These are the new Samsung, right? Aiwa, that's the Japanese said. How do they say yes in Arabic? They say Aiwa. Okay, well, let's call it Aiwa, and then if they ask for something, right, at the souk, right, you say, oh, do you want this one? Aiwa. Oh, he wants Aiwa. So they go get Aiwa, right, and sell them an Aiwa television. So this is what we're dealing with. It's gone crazy. The whole world's gone insane. So nothing's clear. And America is really become the source of it. You see, it used to be Europe, right? It used to be Europe. But Europe threw the football to America. They said, listen, we're about to be tackled by all these countries that we've colonized and tyrannized for the last 60 years. So let's give the ball to somebody that hasn't had any, they're actually free. They were colonized at one time by us, now they're free and they're the democratic beacon of the world. So they threw the ball to New York, and New York took over the game. So this is what's happened. So America now is importing all of these things. But the Americans, it's like the Avis, I think it's Avis, we try harder. Right? The Americans have this thing called quality assurance, and it's kufr with a smile. You see? That's have a nice day. That's what the Americans do. You see, they colonize you with a smile. Like the British and the French and all these other, they came down with their gunboats and blew people to bits and pieces. And the Americans came in and have a nice day, right? And before you knew it, they controlled all the natural resources and everything else. And they do it in really nice ways, so people feel like they're having a nice day, right? Sitting in their Aramco office in their swivel chair, or wherever they are, I don't know. So this is what's happened. So the sicknesses of this society are affecting the whole world. Now, if you look at the sickness of this society, the primary and fundamental disease of this culture is that they have completely disengaged from any spiritual tradition, whether it's Catholicism, Anglicanism, Protestantism, whatever you want to call it. See, all the European countries, even when they were colonialists, right, they still had religious teachings. I mean, the French actually believed that they were doing holy wars against the Muslims. They don't have holy wars in America. They don't. What they have is profit wars, right? That's what they do. They go and they fight for profit. They risk not their lives, but their dollars. And that's what America's about. It's about spreading consumerism all over the world and turning people into consumers. And Allah says, إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَيَطْغَى أَرْرَآهُ اسْتَغْنَى, that man has surely, humanity has surely transgressed the boundaries in thinking themselves independent. And this is what America's disease is, that we are independent. We don't need wahy, we don't need revelation. We don't need any spiritual tradition. We've created our own tradition, our own religion. It's the religion of consumption, you see. Credit has replaced trust in God. People used to trust in God. Now they trust their American Express card, you see. I mean, this isn't a joke. Don't leave home without it. See, it used to be people didn't leave home without trusting in God. In fact, when Muslims actually step out the house, they're supposed to say, Bismillahi tawakkaltu ala Allahi. In the name of Allah, I trust in Allah. And when we go on a journey, we say, Allahumma anta khalifati fi safri wa fi mali wa ahli. You're my khalifa. You're who I'm leaving behind in my journey to take care of my family and my wealth. But people have lost that. Now they trust in their credit cards. They trust in their ability to get a loan from the bank. Their provision is all seen in economic terms, not from وَفِي السَّمَاءِ, right? رِزْقَكُمْ. Like in the heavens is your provision. That's not the way people see it anymore. So there's a deep disengagement from the actual nature of reality. Existence is existing with the haqq. You see, Allah created the heavens and the earth bil haqq, with reality, in truth. So things are happening and taking place whether people are aware of it or not. The madman will sit in the middle of a rainstorm and deny that it's raining. You see, but you can see that it's raining. You don't need to be told that it's raining. And like that, you see, the mu'min sees reality as it is. Allahumma arini al-haqqa haqqa warzuqni ittiba'a. Show me things as they truly are. Show me things in reality and give me the blessing of following the truth. وَأُرِينِي الْبَاطِلَ بَاطِلًا. And show me falsehood as it truly is, as falsehood. What this is disengaging from delusion, which in the Arabic vocabulary and the Quranic vocabulary is called ghurur. Ghurur is to be deluded. Allah tells us, لا يغرنكم تقلب الذين كفروا في البلاد. Don't be deluded by the way the kuffar prance about in the earth. Don't be deluded by it. You see, mata'un qalil. It's just temporary enjoyment. You see, that if I have an American passport, I can fly wherever I want. And if I have the unfortunate disadvantage of being born in Sierra Leone, right, I have a very difficult chance of ever getting out of that country. And if I do, I'm going to find obstacles wherever I go. So from the point of view of the ignorant Sierra Leonean, right, the Americans are in paradise because they can go wherever they want. And they have a little gold American Express card to make everything easy when they get there. Check in the hotel or whatever they do. So things are very out of balance. Right? We're living in an age that is out of balance. And the most imbalanced societies on the planet are right here in our backyards. We're living in it, you see. So this is a diseased society, and the people have deep disease. It's not simple. It can't be reduced to some simple formula. It's deep kufr. It's a virulent kufr. It is infectious by nature. Those that are exposed to it become diseased by it. It becomes very difficult to actually combat it. So then we say, well, what are the manifestations of the disease? I believe that the disease is this belief in complete independence from Allah. You see, they say in God we trust. Like in America, on the dollar bill it says in God we trust. What they don't tell you is that the dollar is the God. Right? That's what they trust. In God we trust, all others pay cash. Right? That's what they say. But in reality, even God has to pay as far as they're concerned. Nobody is sacred in the American culture, because it is a sacrilegious culture. It's a culture that is iconoclastic by nature. It breaks tradition. It doesn't like tradition. It is a traditionalist society. Oscar Wilde, right, that poor fellow from England, so actually he's from Ireland, even poorer, right? The Irish they're like the third world of Europe. Right? That's why they're actually the nicest Europeans. He said that the oldest tradition in America is their youth. Right? There's no tradition. McDonald's and Madonna, that's Michael Jackson now. The poor people in Africa listening to Michael Jackson, if they knew what he was really up to, right? How sick and diseased. I mean, you have to have pity. You feel pity towards somebody in that state that walks around looking like they should be in a wax museum, right? I mean, that's a very pathetic state to be in, and he's a result of this society. He's actually glamorized in this society. But it's spreading all over the Muslim world. People want this stuff. I don't want it. But I go over the Muslim world, and this is what they want. I mean, they were all lining up now. There's McDonald's in Mecca. Right? I mean, think about that. McDonald's, Kentucky Fried Chicken, Colonel Sanders in Mecca. I mean, that is, to me, something very serious. It's not a simple thing that we can reduce to kind of, yeah, isn't that amusing? I mean, that's something really telling us about the nature of the world we're living in. And people are lining up. When they first opened up, I was there. They're lining up around the corners to get a Big Mac, right? I mean, they don't even have the ingenuity to like have Mick Abdullahs or something, right? That's what I saw. This one was the safest way, right? Trying to be a little clever. But I mean, this is the imitation of the Americans and the kuffar that the Prophet ﷺ told us that people would end up down the lizard's hole. Well, they're down there and they're eating Big Macs down the lizard's hole. So it's a serious sickness. Now, how does Islam treat these things? I mean, this is what I was asked to talk about. I could go on and on and on about the terrible state of affairs, and we'd all get depressed and walk out there feeling terrible. So I'll try not to do that. It's getting harder and harder though. But alhamdulillah, the nature of Islam is it's a deen of hope, right? The Quran says that the people of ya'as, the people of despair, are the kafirun. They're the people of despair. But we should be aware of the age we're living in. We shouldn't be fooled. We shouldn't be simpletons, mughaffalin. We now see that in the Muslim world, there's no place that we can point to anywhere in the Muslim world and say, that's Islam. There's no place. We can point to individuals and say, there's a Muslim. You see, I can do that today. And hopefully you can do that in this room. You can point to people and say, here is an example of Islam. Because Islam, by its nature, is in motion. It's not a static thing. It's moving. If you look at the Quran, الَّذِينَ آتَيْنَاهُمُ الْكِتَابِ يَتْلُونَهُ حَقَّ تِلَاوَتِهِ. Those that we have given the book, they يَتْلُونَهُ. Look at the word tilawa. It's awesome because it means to recite, but it also means to follow. وَالشَّمْسِ وَالْقَمَرِ إِذَا تَلَاهَا. Right? وَالْقَمَرِ إِذَا تَلَاهَا. The moon when it follows the sun, you see. So tilawa, reciting the Quran, and it says in the Quran that those who we have given the book and they recite it, but they also, it is implied in that recitation that they follow it. In other words, that they're in motion, that the book is in action. It's happening. When Aisha radiallahu anha was asked, how was the Prophet ﷺ's character? She said, كَانَ خُلُقُهُ الْقُرْآنِ. His character was the Quran. In other words, sallallahu alayhi wasallam was the embodiment of the Quran. We are not, you see, in Western religion, they separate the mind from the body. And what happens is you separate action, right? Which is a physical thing. Action is physical. Speaking is part of our action because it's physical. Your tongue has to move. Thoughts, you're not taken into account for your thoughts. Why? Because they're not actions. They're in the mind, right? They're in the intellect. Actions are motion. Motion, by its nature, is physical. The Muslims do not separate the physical from the spiritual, or the emotional, or the intellectual. The human being is a totality. It's a whole. This is why our prayer, by its nature, is physical. You see, we pray physically. We don't close our eyes like they do in the Buddhist tradition or the Hindu tradition. And I mean, you can meditate, right? The Prophet ﷺ meditated, and the Sahaba did take time for tafakkur and reflection. I'm not saying that that's not, but the fundamental prayer of the Muslims is a physical action. It is in the body, that we are in the body and we actually move with the body. Why? Because we are our body. Our body is essential to our nature. And it's not separated. And so Quran is the embodiment. You see, the teaching is a qira'ah. Quran is a recitation which implies, it's a book, right? But it's called Al-Quran, which means that it's actually in motion. You see, it's happening. It's not static. You can't fix it. You can't say, this is what it means. Because there's always new meanings emerging. لا يشبع منه العلماء. The scholars will never be satiated from the Quran. In other words, they'll always be, because it's an ocean. And even now, to this day, the scientists have not discovered all of the things in the ocean. They keep finding new things in there. Because that's the nature of an ocean, is that it's vast. And you can keep going and going and looking. And you'll keep finding new things. And this is the nature of Quran. It's a living thing, you see. The Quran by its nature is alive. And where is it alive? فِي صُدُورِ النَّاسِ فِي صُدُورَ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمِ. In the breasts of those who have been given knowledge. In other words, those people are the embodiment of this teaching. They are the Quran in motion. They are the Quran in motion. When the Sahaba left the Arabian Peninsula, the Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith, أَنْتُمْ فِي زَمَانٍ قَلِيلٌ قُرَّأَهُ كَثِيرٌ فُقَهَاءَهُ. You're in a time, the reciters of this age are very few. But those who embody the recitation are many, that know it's halal and haram and act according to it. You see. وَسَائِرُوهُ وَقَلِيلٌ سَائِرُوهُ وَكَثِيرٌ مُعْطُوهُ. And those who ask are few, and those who give, وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. And those who give are many. And from what we provided them, they give out. وَسَيَأْتِي عَلَى أُمَّتِي زَمَانٍ كَثِيرٌ قُرَّأَهُ قَلِيلٌ فُقَهَاءَهُ. How many recite and how few know its meaning and act according to it. are fuqaha. Faqih is the one that understands, and understanding implies action. If you know something intellectually and don't act according to it, you're not faqih. That's not fiqh. Fiqh is something that is, when the Prophet ﷺ made dua, he used to make dua that people would learn fiqh. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith in the Sahih Muslim, مَنْ يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِهِ خَيْرًا يُفَقِّهُ فِي الدِّينِ. The one that Allah wants good for, He gives him fiqh, understanding of this deen. And the good, you see, is in his actions, that he acts according to what he knows. Because the thing, if you know something and don't act according to it, that is not good by its nature. It's actually bad for you. It's better that you don't know something than that you know it and don't act according to it. And so this is the nature of the teaching, is that it's embodied. And this was the nature of the Sahaba. So when they went places, they were the embodiment, and people could look at them and say, whatever he is or she is, I want to be like that. See, I want to be like that. When they went to the different places on this planet, they didn't speak the language of the people, but they had light. They had a healing, you see. And people felt better being in that light. They just had a transaction with the person, and something took place. Something took place. And so they followed these people. That was their nature. So the healing, you see, you have to first understand the disease before you can treat it. That's why so much of the Quran is dedicated to explaining to us the nature of kufr. I mean, look just in the Quran at the definition of man, insan, which is not really man, but the human being, because in the Arabic language it means male and female. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us a twofold definition of the human being in the Quran, the insan. On the one hand, if you read certain verses of the Quran, you would come to the conclusion that the human being was a vile thing, right? Allah says that He created man min ma'in maheen, from a vile fluid. From a vile fluid. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that min sulalatin min teen, from mud, from earth and water. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that قُتِرَ الْإِنسَانُ مَا أَكْفَرَ مِنْ أَيِّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقَ مِنْ نُطْفَةٍ خَلَقَ فَقَدَّرَ فَيَسَّرَ. From how man destroys himself, right? How he's destroyed. From what is he created? Right? From what? From a nutfa, a drop of fluid. And then Allah fashions it, measures it out from a drop of fluid. So if you look from the one aspect, it would seem that the nature of man is a vile nature, a low nature. But then you look at these other ayahs, verses in the Quran, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. We have ennobled the children of Adam. وَقَالَ رَبُّكَ إِنِّي جَاعِلُ الْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. And your Lord said to the angels, I'm placing in the earth a khalifa. I mean, khilafa is a big thing. You're standing in the place of Rabb al-Alameen. وَكَلَّمَ مُوسَى تَكْلِيمًا. And he spoke to Musa. وَاتَّخَذَ إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَاتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ إِبْرَاهِيمَ خَلِيلًا. And he took Ibrahim as a friend. Man's raised up. Man's exalted in the Quran. So there's these two pictures here, and when we reflect on that, Allah is addressing the two natures of man. Man has two natures. One is to humiliate himself, to be like an animal. And the other is to think that he's a god, you see, because he has these incredible attributes. He's this paragon of perfection. He has attributes that are angelic. He has the intellect. The nature has been subjugated for him. We have power and dominion over creation. And so people will become deluded by that, you see. Start thinking that I'm something special, I'm something extraordinary. And it will lead to takabbur, to arrogance, istikbar, kibriya, khuyala, the diseases of the heart. So on the one hand you see, you have what are called in the Quranic vocabulary, the mustad'afeen, those that are weak and humiliated in the earth, subjugated, exploited, which is the vast majority of humanity now. And then you have the al-mala'. You see in the Quranic vocabulary, those people, the people that consider themselves akabira mujrimiha, the big mujrimeen, the mutakabbirin, the jababira, the taghut, al-zalimun, the oppressors, al-mu'tadun, those who aggress in the earth. So here these two being called, on the one hand to the jabbar, to the one that thinks that he's mustaghni, that he thinks that he's ghani, that he's rich and powerful in dominion. When Fir'aun says, look at me, ana rabbukum al-a'la, I'm the God, look, I've been given the dominion of Egypt. I must be a God. Look at what I have in my possession, you see? And then who does Allah send to Fir'aun? Maheen, humble in the eyes of Fir'aun. La yakadu yubin, he can barely communicate. Musa alayhi salam, Kareem Allah, and he sends him and he says, La takhaf, don't fear, innaka min al-aminin, you're from the people of amana and aman, the people of trust and the people of safety, because you're from the people that Allah has chosen and given His message to. Go to Fir'aun. Idhaba ila Fir'aun. Go to Fir'aun. Right? Go to Fir'aun. And what do you tell him? You're not Allah. Anta min ma'in maheen. You're just a little drop of fluid yesterday in the womb of your mother. Don't think that you're something special. Humble yourself. Go low. And what does Fir'aun say? Are we going to follow these slaves? Are we going to follow these? وَقَوْمُهُمَا لَنَا عَابِدُونَ. Their people are slaves, our slaves. See, that's what the Americans say now. Become Muslim? Follow the Pakistanis? We send them billions of dollars every year so they can buy our weapons. Why should we follow them? Follow the Saudis, those people that wear rags on their heads? Right? And that's what they think. Look at us. Look at us. We're number one. And that's what the Americans think. We're number one. We must be the chosen people. We've got color TV. We've got 2 cars in every garage. We've got a chicken in every pot. I mean, they don't even have food in Somalia. Doesn't that tell you something? You see, that's the way the human being looks at things. إِنَّ الْإِنسَانِ إِذَا ابْتَلَاهُ رَبُّهُ فَأَكْرَمَهُ وَنَعَّمَهُ فَيَقُولُ رَبِّي أَكْرَمَنِ. That man, when Allah tries him, gives him tribulation, gives him benefits, gives him gifts, he says, oh, my Lord, He's ennobled me. وَإِذَا ابْتَلَاهُ فَقَدَرَ عَلَيْهِ رِزْقَهُ فَيَقُولُ رَبِّي أَهَانَنِي. And if the opposite happens, he said, my Lord's forsaken me. He's humiliated me. This is the materialistic standard that people use and look at things. And Islam gives us a new way of looking at the world. So Islam calls these jababira and it tells them, worship Allah. Look at Rib'i ibn Amr when he went to Kisra. And he comes in and Kisra said, he's an Arab, desert Arab, wearing his rags. And he comes into the court of Kisra and walks across his famous carpet. And all the mala, right, all his wuzara, his ministers there, right? It would be like now some poor pathetic Muslim coming out of Somalia or Sudan or something and walking into the White House, right? And there all the congressmen are, and there's Bill Clinton, and he says, in his rags, he says, I'm coming with a message. And Bill Clinton says, well, what's the message? And he says, that you have to submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and quit oppressing people. And Bill Clinton looks at the Majlis al-Shuyukh, right, the congressman, he says, what do you think of this character? And they say, this is pretty pathetic, right? I mean, that's the same scenario. And that's what they said. And he said, what are you calling us to? And he said, لِنُخْرِجُكُمْ مِنْ عِبَادَةِ الْعِبَادِ إِلَى عِبَادَةِ رَبِّ الْعِبَادِ. To take you out of the worship of slaves and created things to the worship of the creator of things and the creator of the servants and slaves. And so Kisra said to them, and his congressman said to him, these are a pathetic people. They have nothing. And he said, but listen to the words that he said. There's wisdom in them. And they fought them and they lost. Because the truth was with Rabi' ibn Amr and falsehood was with those people. You see, so this is the nature, the sira'. So Allah tells the mustad'afin, the weak and the oppressed in the earth, يُرِيدُ أَن يَمُنُّ عَلَى الَّذِينَ اسْتُضْعِفُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ. That He wants to give as a gift to those who are oppressed in the earth. وَيَجْعَلْهُمْ أَئِمَّةً وَيَجْعَلْهُمْ الْوَارِثِينَ. To make them the leaders and them the inheritors of the earth. This is the promise of Allah to those weak and oppressed in the earth. If they do what? If they worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And to show who? وَلِنُرِيَ فِرْعَانَ وَهَمَانَ وَجُنُودَهُمَا مَا كَانُوا مِنْهُمْ يَحْضَرُونَ. To show Fir'aun, to show the political power, to show Haman, to show the economic power, and to show the Junud, to show the military power. In other words, to show the White House, the Federal Reserve, and the Pentagon. مِنْهُمْ مَا كَانُوا يَحْضَرُونَ. What they were afraid of in the first place. See, a spokesman in the Pentagon said in the Newsweek magazine in 1991 that in the Pentagon in the 1980s we had a visceral fear of Islam. Much more than we feared communism. You see, because they know that communism is an empty philosophy. It's an empty philosophy because it's based on false principles. But they know historically that the power that Islam has had in infusing the weak and the oppressed in the earth with the light of truth, haqq, and knowledge, and then taking that light and changing the world that they were in. They know the power. You see, they've read we haven't read our history books, but they've read the history books. So they know it. Just like Fir'aun knew it, just like Haman knew it, and just like the armies knew it. And they tried to put out the light of Allah. وَيُرِيدُونَ لِيُطْفِئُوا نُورَ اللَّهِ. They want to put out the light of Allah. وَاللَّهُ مُتِمُّ نُورُهُ أو مُتِمَّ نُورِهِ وَلَوْ كَرِهَ الْكَافِرُونَ. Even if they're averse to it, even if they dislike it, Allah is completing His light. So, bringing these people out of darkness into the light of Islam. I said last night, فَاقِدُوا شَيْءٍ لَا يُعْطِيهِ. Somebody doesn't have something, can't give it. We can do a theoretical. You see, I can look at that. We can do a theoretical look at how Islam would do this. It's very clear. The first and most fundamental principle is to let these people recognize that you're from a vile drop of fluid. That you're created from clay. That you need to humble yourselves. That you can't prance about in the earth. You cannot be 5% of the world's population and be consuming 30% of its natural resources. You see, the average American has an ecological impact on the environment, right? That's detrimental to the environment, that's 40 times greater than the average Indian. In India, and 100 times greater than the average Kenyan in Kenya. And they complain about those people down there, they populate like rabbits. Right? Before you know it, they're going to be eating up all the resources, which means we'll have to lose weight. Right? which means they'll actually get better, right? Because they're all dying of gluttony. And that's what they're dying. That's what Koop, their Surgeon General, said. Americans are dying from overeating. So they're all out to here, and the Somalians are the opposite, right? And then they go there with Operation Hope or something. What do they call that? Operation Hope? Huh? Restore Hope. Oh my goodness. Restore Hope. Which was really a Pentagon, all it was. See, the Americans, all of a sudden, if the average American pays $6,000 in taxes, $3,103 goes to the military-industrial complex. $128 goes to education. So all of a sudden, when the Russians are no longer around, the Americans say, shouldn't we be spending this stuff on education or something? Because nobody can read anymore. And the Pentagon says, uh-oh, we're in trouble. They might actually think of cutting our budget. So what do? Restore hope. Hope for who? The Somalians? No, for the Pentagon. You see? So they have, it was a photo opportunity. They were all out there landing on the beach, smiling with their guns, and there's all CNNs there with their cameras rolling. Could you move a little over there to the side there? Could you show your M16 a little? Right? And that's what it was. And so the Americans are saying, those are our boys over there, restoring hope. Right? Hope to who? They were the ones that created the situation. They created the despair. You see? I mean, it's like somebody cutting you up with a knife and then saying, hey, don't worry about it. I'm a surgeon. Okay, I'll sew you up. Are you going to trust him to do that? You see, that's what they create. Saeed Barra, he's a creation of some very sick people, probably with bald heads, in the Pentagon. They actually drew out, who should we put in the Horn of Africa? Well, let's see, he should be ruthless. Put that on top of the list, right? They're very passive people. They need somebody to beat them down with a good stick, right? And he should be very greedy, right? So that we can buy him. I mean, if he has any sense of patriotism, where he actually thinks about his country, you know, that these are Somalians. I mean, after all, my mother was a Somalian. So maybe I should actually try to look after them. Because I was just a peasant one day walking around with bare feet. But so he has to be greedy, ambitious. So they write all these characteristics. We've got just the man. You see, our CIA correspondent in Mogadishu says there's this character named Saeed Barri. He's a colonel in the army. So that's what they do. That's how it happens. And it's all over the Muslim world. That's what they do. They work out specifications, and then they look within the army for these characters, and then they say, look, play the game, and we'll make you president. Now, every once in a while, because these people were dealing with kind of infrahuman intellects here, right? So every once in a while, one of them says, because he's surrounded himself by all these yes men, right? Like Idi Amin, remember that poor guy? He's surrounded himself by all these yes men that are saying, oh, great and majestic leader, you great and triumphant one. And pretty soon he starts believing it, right? I really am this important person, because they all keep telling me that. Right? And they're all smiling, they're all yes men, right? Aristotle said that tyrants always surround themselves by yes men because they feel insecure. That's the nature of tyranny, is tyrants are cowards. That's their nature. They're actually cowards. That's why they go around tyrannizing people like bullies. You know, bullies, all the famous stories about the big bully that goes and punches out, and then one day the little kid sticks up for himself and then the bully runs away. Because that's their nature, they're cowards. So they surround themselves by these pathetic little caricatures of people, and they tell them how wonderful they are and how great they are, and everything they're doing is perfect and wonderful. Ilayka, ilayka, that's what they say, all these poor Iraqi children to Saddam Hussein. You know, what a great leader you are, and they in their poetry and all these things. And so they start believing it every once in a while, not too often, but every once in a while it gets to their head, and then they actually try to do something that's not in the game plan, right? And then they say, he's getting out of line. And so they go and tell him, listen, you step the boundaries there. He said, well, what are you telling me? Who do you think? I'm the ruler of Uganda or wherever they are. I'm the ruler of Iraq. I have Scud missiles. You can't push me around. And so these poor guys at the Pentagon say, something went wrong. This wasn't put into the... And so they have to work out how to teach him a lesson. Either they get rid of him, right? Or they humiliate them. Or they just remind them who's in charge so they get back in line. So that's what we're dealing with. And so the whole point of that is here's what we're dealing with. We've got these mustad'afeen in the earth, which are now the Muslims. And Islam by its nature is not a religion of... Christianity by its nature is a religion of persecution. They've been persecuted from the beginning. And they love persecution. They feel good when they're persecuted. They've always, that's how it started. And that's, for 300 years they were persecuted in Rome. And so they feel good when they're persecuted. Like something, it's going right, you see. They start getting worried when they're not persecuted. The Muslims they're people of Nasr. I mean, the first chapter of the Quran is called Al-Fatiha. Al-Fatiha is the one that gives victory. I mean, that's the one, it means the opening, right? But it's also the same word for the Al-Fatih, the one that gives victory. I mean, that's one of the names of Allah. And that's how our book begins. Al-Fatiha. I mean, this is the victory of the Muslims, the ones who say, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Tawheed. Alhamdulillah is only for Allah. Tawheed. Rabbil Alameen, Lord of the world. Iyyaka na'budu. Our ibadah, our worship is only for you. Wa iyyaka nasta'een. And our isti'ana, our seeking help is only to you. Those are the people of Fath. Those are the people of Nasr. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينَ. And the people of what? Of humility. Of humility. That never become deluded and think that I can't go wrong. إِهْدِنَا الصِّرَاطَ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ. Guide me to the right path. In other words, I never become so deluded that I think that I'm perfect. That I don't need hidayah. Because hidayah is an ongoing thing. It never stops until you die. So keep us humble. إِهْدِنَا الصِّرَاطَ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم, the ni'mah of hidayah. غير المغضوب عليهم, not those who know things and don't act according to them. ولا الضالين, and not those who don't know anything and just go out and do whatever they want. Not like the Jewish trap of falling into knowing the truth and not acting according to it, and not the Christian trap, which is not even bothering to learn the truth. To say, well, the truth has set us free, so we don't even need to bother with it anymore. We don't need Sharia, we don't need any laws, because we're filled with the Holy Spirit. And so that's Al-Fatiha. These are the people of victory, are the Muslims, the people of this chapter. We say it every day in our prayer, and that's what it is. It's those people are the ones that are given victory. And they take the guidance to other people. And then the book begins, Alif Lam Mim, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابِ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. There's no doubt in this book. هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. It's a guidance for the people of taqwa. This is the book, there's no doubt. That's how the book begins negating doubt. And so then Allah gives us the attributes of the believers, that they believe in Allah, they believe in the unseen, and they give out from what they're given. And then He tells us about the kuffar, that they are the ones that don't believe in this teaching, and they don't follow the truth. And then the munafiqeen, and then it gets complicated, because then you're into a complicated creature. So that's how the book begins. And then it tells us about man. Look at the very first, in terms of, as you open the book, which is the Al-Baqarah, that Allah gives us the definition of the three types of human beings. And then the first revelation is Iqra, Bismi Rabbika alladhi khalaq, khalaqa al-insana min alaq. from a clot of blood, congealed clot, from a clinging thing. That's what we were created from. So the first, historically, the first revelation tells us who we are. But then it tells us, again, الذي خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم علم بالقلم. So Allah tells us that He's the Akram, He's the one that gives ikram. So it has in that first revelation the two characteristics of man. The alaq, which is the low, and then the mukram, which is the high, who knows, that was taught by Allah. Allah taught us with the qalam, with the pen. So He's ennobled us. So right there in those first revelation, you have that picture of man. So it's telling the mustad'afin, those weak in the earth, Allah has ennobled you. He's raised you up. Recognize who you are. The Muslims have forgotten who they are. They've forgotten that they're the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the best of creation, who lived in a little house in the Arabian Peninsula, sleeping on a mat made out of palm fibers that used to imprint on his cheek. And when Umar radiallahu anhu wept, and he said, "Ma abkaka ya ibn al-Khattab? What's making you weep, ya ibn al-Khattab?" And he said, "Ya Rasulullah, laqad ra'aytu qusura Qaysar وَكَيْفَ يَعِشُونَ وَإِنَّكَ أَوْلَى بِهِمْ مِنْ ذَلِكَ." I saw the palaces of Caesar and how they live there, and you're so much more worthy of that. What does the Prophet ﷺ say? "Ya ibn al-Khattab, أَلَا تَرْضَى أَن تَكُنْ لَهُمُ الدُّنْيَا وَلَنَا الْآخِرَةِ." Aren't you content that they have the dunya and we have the akhirah? Aren't you content with that, Ya ibn al-Khattab? He's not thinking about himself. Umar, he's thinking about the best of creation. He wants to see him living in nice palace, right, with servants. And the Prophet says, that's not our way. We're the people of the poor. Faqri fakhri. My poverty is my pride. It is my pride. Not the sick poverty of the ghettos and the sick. It's the poverty of choice. It's the choice to be humble. That is the poverty of the Prophet ﷺ. It's not a poverty that abases. It's a poverty that raises up and elevates people. It's not a poverty that makes people get on welfare or go ask people. It's a poverty that makes people content with a little. The Prophet ﷺ said, رَحِمَ اللَّهُ إِمْرَأً رُزِقَ الْكِفَافِ وَقَنِعَ بِهِ. Allah has had mercy on the one that's given just enough to get by in this world, and he's content with that. You see, we live in a world of complete extremes. We live in a world of feasts and parties and so much plenitude, cornucopias, and we live in a world of 50 million people dying from malnutrition and starvation that are under 15 years of age every year. We live in a time when people on the Arabian Peninsula are dying from overeating, and their brothers in Somalia and sisters are dying from starvation. That's the time we're living in, you see. And it's a time of deep imbalance. And Islam is the middle way. It's the way that brings the mizan. That brings وَوَضَعَ الْمِيزَانِ أَلَّا تَطْغَوْا فِي الْمِيزَانِ. He set the balance that you don't transgress the balance. وَأَقِيمَ الْوَزْنَ بِالْقِسْطِ وَلَا تُخْسِرُ الْمِيزَانِ. And establish this balance with justice. And don't upset the balance. If people are hungry, feed them. If people are oppressed, then give them victory and help. If people are poor, then enrich them from asking. If people are dying of starvation, then look at them as a responsibility on you. The Prophet ﷺ says, لا يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر من بات شبعان وجاره جائع. He doesn't believe in Allah and the last day who sleeps satiated and his neighbor sleeps in hunger. So this is Islam, establishing the balance. And we are in the most imbalanced society on earth. And if we're participating in their cornucopia of plenitude, then we're part of it. Because the earth right now is completely tilted, it's out of balance. You have the south and you have the north, and it's out of balance. And the Muslims are the people that are supposed to establish the balance, to set things straight. But if we're not thinking about it, if we're not even thinking about it, if we're so busy stuffing our faces, right? If we're so busy with the maladda, with the laddat of dunya, with all this pleasure of dunya, that we're not even thinking about these other things, because they're out of sight, out of mind. Right? When the Christians, they use guilt, right? They show all these starving babies and things like that. They just turn the channel. See, the Muslims, wallahi, people wept, because I was in Mecca during the last 10 days of Ramadan, alhamdulillah. And when the Imam started making dua for Bosnia and Herzegovina, everybody started weeping. But really, not to belittle, because all of us, I felt the same way, and we all do. But it's like Abu Abdullah, when he left Granada, there's a place, it's called Mabka al-Muslim, the weeping place of the Muslim. When Abu Abdullah left Granada and surrendered Granada to the Christians, he looked back. They call it Zafrat al-Moor. Now in Spain they still call it that, the sigh of the Moor. He looked back at Granada and started weeping. And his mother said, Ibka alayha kan nisa'i ba'dama lam tuhafid alayha kar rijal. Weep like women weep over it after you didn't defend it like men. You see? And those are the tears that we shed. You see, the tears, the collective tears of the Muslims are the tears of ajaiz. You see, they're the tears of people that have just rakanu ila dunya. Nasullah fa ansahum anfusuhum. They forgot Allah, so Allah made them forget their own selves. And if you forget your own self, forgetting yourself is not forgetting to eat. That's not forgetting yourself. Forgetting yourself is to forget what your responsibilities are in the world. That is nisyan. Is to forget that we have duties. We have something to do. We have a job. As Muslims, we have a job to take this deen out to the people. And really, and this is the truth, if the truth be said, and inshallah let the truth be said, the responsibility of us in these countries, if we're here, is to take this message out to those who will listen to it. And those who will listen to it are the poor and the oppressed. They're the mustad'afeen. And if you read the Quran, you will come to that conclusion very quickly. The Mala do not accept Islam except in rare cases. And those people are important people. It's not to belittle their importance. Umar was from the Mala. Al-Khattab was a big family in Mecca, but he's not the majority of Sahaba. The majority of the Sahaba are the Abu Dhar al-Ghifaris and the Bilal ibn al-Rabahs. Right? They're the people that nobody cared about, that were the people that had no societal value. Abu Dhar was from a tribe of desert brigands, and Bilal was an Abyssinian slave, or Zayd, right? The freed slave of the Prophet ﷺ, or Ibn Mas'ud. These people were humble people. And they're the ones that followed the Prophet ﷺ. And they're the people that we should go out, and they're the people that will respond. And wallahi, I'll tell you this. If we can turn these societies around in this country, there are enough Muslims in this country that, wallahi, I believe this. If in the United States alone, if the black community becomes Muslim, as they are becoming Muslim, despite our noses, like the Arabs say, رَغْمَ أُنُوفِنَا. And you see the transformations that take place in those people and the light that enters into their houses and the dignity that they get from Islam, that elevates them and makes them realize that لَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ, that we have truly ennobled Bani Adam. يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسِ إِنَّا خَلَقْنَاكُم مِّن ذَكَرٍ وَأُنثَى وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. The one that knows that, truly knows that, will never feel humiliated, will never feel exploited, will never feel belittled or humbled by anyone in front of him, because he's the person of ikram from Dhul Jalali wa Ikram, from the one that gives majesty and possesses it, and gives generosity and nobility and possesses it. He allows his slave لِيَتَحَلَّى بِمَكَارِمِ الْأَخْلَاقِ, to ornament himself with the noble characteristics of man. وَإِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمِ الْأَخْلَاقِ. I was sent to perfect the noble characters of man, of humanity. And this is what Islam does. And if those people accept Islam, wallahi, when the Americans see the transformation within those communities as they're taking place in microcosmic scales right now, in New York, in Philadelphia, in Washington, in Atlanta, and these different places, they will have to admit that the transformative power of Islam is unequaled and unmatched on the face of the earth. Because it changes human beings, it changes societies, it raises those who are low up, and it lowers those who are high and exalted down, and they meet in a middle place, which is called the middle way, which is called Islam. But Sahaba didn't waste their time arguing. And the Prophet ﷺ said, مَا ضَلَّ قَوْمٌ بَعْدَ الْهُدَى إِلَّا أُوتُوا الْجَدَلِ. No people go astray after guidance except that they're given in place of that guidance argumentation. So when you see people arguing, my advice to you is to do what Imam Malik radiallahu anhu did. He used to get up from the gathering and say, أَنْتُمْ حَرْب. You're just war. مع السلامة. The only people that should argue are the ulama. And Al-Raghib al-Isbahani says, الْجِدَالُ فِي حَقِّ الْعُلَمَاء مَكْرُوهُ فَمَا بَالُكَ بِالْعَوَامِ. That argumentation between ulama is makruh, it's distasteful. So what about those who don't have knowledge? So don't waste your time with people that want to argue, because there's a lot of them out there. And recognize we have to unite our efforts. We have to have economic sovereignty. Our communities have to become economically independent. This is essential to the vitality of our communities wherever we are, but particularly in these countries. We have to be economic. Our money should be going back into the community. We have to be teaching our children the deen, not in Sunday school. Not Sunday school. It is not enough. It's not acceptable. We need to be retraining so that we have, if they go into medicine or economics or literature or engineering or whatever they study at the university level, that prior to that they have had a sound foundation in Islam. They memorize either the whole Quran or a large part of it, or at least the jawahir, the essential points of the Quran, that they know the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, that they know their ibadat and mu'amalat. They know how to survive as a Muslim when they buy and they sell, when they pray, when they go on Hajj, when they do these things. They need to learn the deen. And the Arabic language needs to be revived. Your children should be learning the Arabic language. It's essential to our deen. English should not be the medium whereby we speak in our conferences and all these things. We need to revive the Arabic language, because the Arabic language is the language of empowerment in Islam. It is the language that accesses the book. There's no such thing as a translation of Quran. It doesn't exist. Whatever you read in these English words, it doesn't convey anything of the power of this message, because the power is in its i'jaz. It's in the incapacitating nature of this book. It incapacitates anyone who attempts to imitate it. And the power is in the Arabic language. And people have to go back to this language and learn it. So we have to be creating schools, and those schools need to have proper minhaj. It has to have a proper methodology, whereby people come out after 12 years of education and they know their deen. They're able to go wherever they go and they have their deen, and nobody can shake them and get them following dajajila, false bearers of false teachings and things like that. They should be grounded firmly in the teachings of Islam that this ummah has accepted for 1,400 years. The vast majority, we follow the Sawad al-A'zam. Alaykum bi Sawad al-A'zam. We don't follow sects and groups and firaq. We follow Ahl al-Sunnah wal-Jama'ah, which is the vast majority of scholars. The Imam Nawawis, the Ibn Hajar al-Asqalanis, the Qadi Iyad's, the Ibn Abd al-Barrs, Al-Raghib al-Isbahanis, all of these great scholars. These are the people we should be following. Not these people with funny ideas that have introduced innovations and things like that. But don't argue with them. Just get on with the business at hand. So there's lots to do. And believe you me, at Maidan right now, the field of battle is بِأَلَحَ الْحَاجِ إِلَى الْفُرْسَانِ. It's in the biggest need of knights, people to go out and engage. Islam is not vital if it's not engaging kufr. It's not vital. It loses its vitality because Islam stands up in the face of kufr and it says, Ha ana. Here am I. Here is Islam. Ha ana. Badirun li kufrika wa li dhulmika wa li jurika wa li fisqika wa li fasadika. All of these things. I'm the alternative. Ta'alaw ila kalimatin sawa'in baynana. Alla na'budu illa Allah. Come to a word that we share, that we only worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't let us take يَتَّخِذُ بَعْضُنَا بَعْضًا أَرْبَابًا مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ. Don't let some of us be mutakabbirin and others be mutadallilin, khadi'in. Don't let some of us be from the people that only hear the ayah لَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ and forget the ayah that we're from ma'in mahin. And don't be from those who think they're from ma'in mahin and never hear وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. Be people of the middle way, people of humility and people of izzah, of dignity. And when those two combine, you have the power of the Muslim. When you have humility with dignity, you have the power of Islam. If you have dignity without humility, you have an arrogant person. It's no benefit, neither to himself nor to others. If you have humility without dignity, you have somebody that's of no benefit. The Muslims are people of izzah and tawadu'. They're people of izzah and tawadu'. People of dignity and people of humility. That's the Muslim. He's the man he joins the opposites. He joins the opposites. So I don't, certainly not claiming to have all the answers, but those are just some things that I've thought about. Dinarun min amal khayrun min qintar min qawl. That a little bit, a dinar or a dirham, like a small amount of action is better than a whole bundle of words. So taking something and just holding to it. If you decide every day to read 10 ayahs of Quran, every day, and not stop on that, you see, or read a juz of Quran, or read a hizb of Quran, every day, and not stop on that. That's better than reading the Quran, the whole Quran from beginning to end one night, and then not picking it up for the next 3 months. Because the best of action is that little action, but it's continuous. كانت أفعاله ديما. That's what the Aisha radiallahu anha said in Sahih al-Bukhari. His actions by their nature were continuous. The Prophet did action that continued. See, one of our biggest problems in our community is that we don't have sources of income. We're always begging. And Allah gave us the whole concept of waqf, of wuquf, awqaf. We need, the Muslims in these communities, you should be buying real estate for the masjid, for Islam, and then rent that out. And so you have every month, you have $700 coming from one house, or $1,000, or buy an apartment complex. And each one of them paying. So every month you have this income that's constant. That's what we need to do. Revive the whole concept of awqaf. People should be giving their money when they get near their death, thinking about awqaf, giving money to Allah and His Messenger, to this deen. Because that's what's going to save us in the next world. Just read the Quran and you'll realize very quickly that infaq, giving out, is one of the essential natures of Islam. They say, al-mahabbatu bidun infaq nifaq. Love without giving out is hypocrisy. If you're not giving out, then you don't love this deen. If you're not giving out of your energy, of your money, of your time, yourself, your wealth, all these things, then it's hypocrisy. That's the bottom line.
Brother, you mentioned that we in North America, in your opening address, are suffering from serious maladies. We have serious drawbacks. We're suffering from economic evils. At the same time, you made reference to the Arabian Peninsula, saying that in your own words, people stuff in their faces. There are also other corruption up there. My question is the Muslim in North America, whether Canada or the United States, they are pulling together in order to override certain economic evils, in order to overpower it through the spread of Islam. We look forward to places like Mecca. You know, that you said that McDonald's now is opening business up there. There are all sorts of other things going on up there. That is the heart of Islam. What is the Muslim ulama or the hierarchy in that region doing in order to eliminate, let's say, economic evils or obstacles towards Islam, so that it reflects the teachings of Rasulullah?
I think from the general, you know, the Arab, they say, Al-Labibu bil-isharati yafham. That if you have intellect, you just need like innuendos. You don't need somebody to just spell everything out for you. So I hope you understand that. The Muslim world, and there's good Muslims everywhere. There's certainly incredible Muslims in the Hijaz. Some of the best Muslims that I've met actually have been from the Hijaz, in fact. And that's not an exaggeration. But there's a lot of problems there. I don't generally like to mention countries because I think all of our countries, unfortunately, are in deplorable situations. Certainly that area is an easy target, right? If you want to set your marks, the bullseye is very big. And as for what the ulama are doing there, a lot of them are very busy with argumentation right now. So, and preoccupied with things like whether Allah has a hand or not or something, I don't know. So it's an unfortunate situation, and but our Prophet ﷺ told us that towards the end of time, he said, إن الإيمان لا يأرز إلى الحجاز and in a riwayah إلى المدينة كما تأرز الحية إلى جحرها. Iman goes back to the Hijaz like a snake goes back to its hole. And Allah has blessed those people with the Haramain al-Sharifain. And I would say this, that there's a lot of troubles in that region, and there's troubles in store. If you look at the Foreign Affairs Journal of fall of 1992. 92. Atkins, who was an ambassador of Saudi Arabia, wrote an article in there and said basically that our strategic interests lie in that region, and what we should do is deplete it completely of its oil reserves within the next 20 years. So that's part of the foreign policy of the United States, is to take all, in fact that's why they're artificially keeping the oil prices so low, so that they can just get as much oil as they can, because they store oil in the United States. There's huge oil reserves actually stored in the United States in case of a national emergency where sea lanes are cut off and things like that, and oil can't get into the country. So that's part of their long-term strategy. I personally am not of the revolutionary school of thought. I think that I agree with Sultan Abdul Hamid that revolutionaries by their nature destroy much more than they ever build up. I think that it's dangerous to instill in the Muslims the idea of coup d'etats and these type of methodologies for changing things, because I believe that the Quranic methodology for change is summed up in the ayah, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ, that Allah does not change a people until they change what's in themselves. As far as certain countries go, there's indications that what's needed is the people literally to just get up and, as an intifada, right, and just say enough's enough. I mean, there are countries that warrant that. So I really don't have much of an answer for that. You know, it's a deep question. I don't think I'm capable of really going into detail about that, because I also believe in that our takalif are different. Our responsibilities are different. In Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahy Anil Munkar, which is the foundational or fundamental, or I know that I'm trying to avoid that word, fundamental, because, right. But the basic principle of Islam is Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahy Anil Munkar after Iman in Allah. And that's what gives the Muslims their moral superiority over other peoples. And it's based on 3 conditions. And the first condition is that you recognize that it's a munkar, and you know what the ma'ruf is. In other words, you recognize the disease for what it is, and you know what the cure is. So for instance, one of the amazing things in this deen is that there are different ways of reciting the Quran. And there's a famous story of Umar heard Ubay ibn Ka'b reciting the Quran, and he told him it was wrong. And he said, well, that's the way the Prophet ﷺ taught me. And so they went to the Prophet, and the Prophet said, they're both right. So like in Quran, because I learned with Riwayat Warsh, and many times if I've led the prayer, there'll be people that don't know Riwayat Warsh. And so I would say something like, I can't think of a good, وَمَن نُعَمِّرْهُ نَنْكُسُ فِي الْخَلْقِ. In Riwayat Warsh they say, وَمَن نُعَمِّرْهُ نَنْكُسُ فِي الْخَلْقِ. And in Hafs it نُنَكِّسُهُ فِي الْخَلْقِ. So there are different recitations. So if somebody doesn't know it, he'll say, نُنَكِّسُهُ فِي الْخَلْقِ. And they think they're correcting you, and they're not. They're just giving you a different variant of reading. And that's why knowledge is so fundamental. You have to know what a munkar is before you can correct it, because it might not be a munkar. It might in fact be perfectly correct. And the second condition is that, and there's difference of opinion about this, but most of them say that you will not bring harm upon yourself. In other words, that you won't put yourself in actual physical bodily danger. And some of them say, because of the ayah when Luqman tells his son to وَأْمِرْ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَانْهَى عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ وَاصْبِرْ عَلَى مَا أَذَاكَ, you know, that you should join right action and forbid evil, and be patient about what you're afflicted with. They use that as a proof that you still have to give Amr bil Ma'ruf. And we know the hadith that the highest jihad is speaking the truth in front of a tyrant, which often means death. So, and then the last prerequisite is that your calling in joining the right and forbidding the wrong does not lead to a fitna or a munkar greater than that thing that you are actually speaking out against. So in many of our countries, in the Muslim countries, to have radical change in the way a lot of Muslims want it leads to fitnas greater than the actual fitna that they're in. And so people suffer. And from that perspective, I think that we have to be very careful. And we've seen in instances with the assassination of Sadat, what came after was actually ended up being worse, right, than what they were in. Because I don't think that solves the problems to chop the head off. It's just not a solution. The solution is that the ulama have to start speaking the truth, and people have to listen to them, and that the rulers need also to recognize that they have responsibilities. Again, it goes back to the khitab al-Qur'ani. You know, the way that the Qur'an is addressing people. It speaks to the rulers and warns them. And we're in a time, again, as the brother said, you know, this is a time when there's deep darkness in this age and there's a global network taking place. But I believe in La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, that no matter how powerful they appear, they're not mu'jizeen Allah fil ard. They're not incapacitating Allah in His earth. Allah is qahirun fawqa ibadihi. He's over all of them, conquering and overpowering, you see. But we have to be people of Allah, and by being people of Allah we become people of Nasr. So, أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله. جزاكم الله خيرا لحسن استماعكم. Thank you for being patient and listening, and forgive me, inshallah, if I said anything that anybody took offense with. It wasn't my intention. And our nature is naqs, it's deficiency. So inshallah, you overlook my shortcomings and I'll try to overlook your shortcomings, and look at the best of each other as brothers and sisters. Inshallah, make us people that look at the best of the Muslims and lower our eyes to the faults and the shortcomings of the Muslims, and make dua that Allah raises the Muslims up, inshallah, and makes us people of the izzah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the izzah of Islam, and inshallah unites the hearts and makes us people of mahabba, of ikhlas, of sincerity, of tawbah, of people of tawbah that turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of people of istiqamah, of uprightness, that Allah gives us uprightness in our gatherings and amongst our family, that Allah protects our children in these countries, and that He raises them up as true Muslims and barreen, like people of piety, filial piety towards their parents, and inshallah put in the hearts of their parents a love for Islam and a desire to transmit that Islam to their children, and not see Islam as a threat from their children, but see Islam as the salvation for their children, and to guide them and guide their children to the best paths. And inshallah, Allah give this community bounty and blessings, and inshallah help you complete this worthy and noble project here, and inshallah make this community a beacon for other communities, inshallah, a beacon of light and istiqamah and mahabba and dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I'll just finish it by saying that the Prophet ﷺ said, مَا عَمِلَ إِبْنُ آدَمْ عَمَلًا أَنْجَى مِنْ عَذَابِ اللَّهِ مِنْ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ, that the son of Adam was not done anything that will protect him more from the punishment of Allah than the remembrance of Allah. And the Prophet ﷺ, when the man told him, قَدْ كَثُرَتْ عَلَيَّ شَرَائِعُ الْإِسْلَامِ فَدُلَّنِي عَلَى شَيْءٍ أَتَشَبَّثُ بِهِ وَأَنْجُو بِهِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ, that the rules of Islam have become too much for me, so indicate to me, guide me to something that if I hold on to it, I'll be saved by it. And he said, فَارِقَ الدُّنْيَا وَلِسَانُكَ رَطَبًا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ, may you leave the world and your tongue is moist with the dhikr of Allah. So inshallah, be ذاكرين Allah ذكرا كثيرا وذاكرات. وأقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون، والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.